Thank you so much for watching my channel. Today, I have a very interesting and a very popular guest on my channel. His name is Mr. Frank Ramos, and he is a lawyer, a personal injury lawyer based out of Miami in Florida. Uh, Mr. Ramos has been an inspiration to me since the time that I joined LinkedIn some 2, 3 years back. And every morning, basically his morning and my evening, I have always seen a very brilliant snippet or a post on his LinkedIn, and that has always inspired me. He talks about his experience as a lawyer. He's the managing partner at Clark Silverglate. He's a speaker, author, and also has his own podcast. And he talks about his experiences. He talks about different areas in which a law student can learn or a lawyer can learn, taking depositions or in terms of the US based legal system ourselves. So I bring to you Mr. Frank Ramos, and this is him and me having a conversation later. But I actually wanted to start off by talking to you about how much of an inspiration you have been to a lot of young law students here in India as well.
Oh,
Although we
thank you.
do, yeah, we do not have advertising because Advocates Act here in India stops us, basically prohibits us from advertising. But the way you've been talking about different manner in which we can talk about our experiences on LinkedIn, that has kind of caught a lot of attention from all of us, a lot of young law students specifically. I know I, for one, at least look forward to your snippets every
Oh,
day
thank you very much.
because
Thank you very much.
one, they are very concise, and the way you talk about so much of an experience just in about 2 to 3 lines, that's really amazing. As a matter of fact, I'd read your book also, which was initially you'd written about attorney marketing 101, and I think despite the fact that we cannot advertise, there is a lot of snippets in it which can be used by advocates even in India to share their experiences of how things flow. What I would like to start with is for you to give us some, pearls of wisdom that you keep talking about, specifically in terms of, I actually like the one where you say repetition, 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 not just as far as speaking is concerned or writing is concerned, but every other thing that we do. So if you may please start.
Sure. The comment I made about repetition is that no matter what field or area you want to pursue in the legal sector, it's going to come from practice, whether it's taking depositions or conducting case investigation or appearing before a judge or a tribunal. The more you do it, the better you get at it. And the first time or first few times, you're not going to feel particularly comfortable. You're going to make mistakes. That's normal. That's part of the process. You're going to maybe beat yourself up a little bit over it, but you're going to learn from it. And that's normal. And so try to find opportunities to do those sorts of things and put yourself in uncomfortable situations and challenge yourself, because at the time it could be a little scary and a little overwhelming, but those are the necessary steps you need to take in order to really advance your career and advance your skill set and develop it.
Right. There was another, a very recent post of yours that I remember very clearly, which became very popular with law students here in India also, where you had said that it is not important that, you come from the best of the law schools or anything of that sort, but as long as you know the right, people who can then maybe introduce you in getting the kind of job that you're looking for. I think that made a lot of sense. Also because in India we have law students who are coming out of in plenty, in terms of there are quite a few law schools which are there, and considering because of the COVID pandemic, there's not many opportunities that they can look at as far as employment is concerned. So I wanted your pointers as far as those law students are concerned who are getting really disheartened, and if you may bring us some optimistic views as far as that goes.
Yeah, we're having similar issues here in the US due to COVID. A lot of firms are curtailing and cutting back on hiring, and unfortunately some firms are letting go young lawyers and law clerks. one of the great approaches is to reach out to your network of people. And if you don't have a huge network, try to build one, even under the circumstances where we really can't travel or meet with people in person as often as we are accustomed or used to. There are a lot of online platforms in terms of voluntary bar associations, trade associations, and other organizations that are meeting on Zoom like this, or
Right.
meeting on other online platforms, and get to know people, get to meet people, follow up with an instant message or an email or text message, however you feel comfortable communicating with that person or those individuals, and develop a relationship. Because just like each of us has friends, and friends reach out to us to try to help them get work or help them do a favor, and that's what friends are for. By developing relationships with others, those individuals will feel a certain kinship with you, and when you ask them for a job or a reference or an opportunity, they're going to be much more inclined to lend a hand than somebody who doesn't know you. So many resumes are going back and forth, and managing partners and leaders of firms are receiving droves of them. And unless you're at the very top of your class, the top schools, you're probably not getting much attention. In order to circumvent that and kind of get to the top of the list and the pile, you want to get to know people who are in a position to hire you. And it's a process. It's not going to happen overnight, but it's certainly something worth laying the foundation for, and pursuing various relationships with various individuals at various firms and companies and in-house positions that one day, either in the short or medium term, can give you a job or position.
Uh, Frank, a couple of years ago, I remember I've been following you for I think more than 2 years now. But around that time, you used to always talk about being disciplined, because I think you used to talk about the struggles which were there and how you overcame all those struggles, be it your personal life or professional life and things like that. And you always kept talking about how it was important that we have to take our steps towards. Um, moving forward. So if you can maybe just tell us a little bit about how you discipline, how you got all the discipline, and what were the key pointers that you adopted in your life in order to reach where you are just now.
Sure. At first, you kind of define for yourself what your goals are, both short, intermediate, and long term, both in the profession and outside of the profession, in terms of where you want to see yourself as a lawyer and where you want to see yourself as a person in the greater community. And just brainstorm that. You can do that at home, or you can do that, in a quiet place, and you can do it with a pencil and a pad, or on your screen or on your phone, and really think through what you want to accomplish. And then as you're brainstorming, look at your list and ask yourself, which of these things you're passionate about? What do you have talents for? Uh, what sort of promote and direct your purpose and your dreams? And once you come up with a list, then kind of organize them in terms of what short, intermediate, and long-term goals you have, and then come up with actual action steps, and figure out, well, if I want to, let's say, write a book on my practice area, what do I need to do? If I want to become known as a leader in this practice area, what do I need to do? If I want to start my own firm, what do I need to do? And so there are a bunch of things to think about in that sense. And so write it out, step by step. And once you have a plan and you have a direction and a mission and a vision, then the question is this, well, you just have to do the hard work then. But you have to lay the groundwork first. You have to determine what the foundations are going to be and have a vision as to where you're going. And that doesn't really take that long per se. You can probably do that in a few days or a few weeks if you already know kind of where you want to go. And you're kind of honest with yourself, and you're honest about what you're good at, what you're not good at, what you dream about, what you're passionate about, and you dive deep in your own psyche and your own thought process, and your own personality, you can probably figure out pretty quickly where you want to be and where you want to go. And then the plan basically is agreeing yourself, I'm going to commit myself either a half hour, an hour a day to achieve this plan. I'm basically going to create a second job for myself, in effect, and pursue this plan. And whatever that plan is, and for each of us, it's different. And it could be multifaceted and may involve other individuals, other resources, a whole host of things. So that's really sort of the issue. Is the first part of the discipline is creating a plan. The second half is doing the hard work day in, day out, week in, week out, month in, month out. And again, for example, if you want to write a book, you say to yourself, I'm going to write so many words a day. Let's say you pick 500 words a day. You can see how quickly you can write a 60,000 word book if you include writing 500 words a day. That's 120 days. You've basically written a book, which is more than most people. So
Correct. Yeah.
kind of break it into little steps through the plan, and make sure each day you're taking and pursuing and enacting those little steps.
Right. Frank, I see that, you of course are a brilliant lawyer practicing out of Miami. You keep talking about your family life as well. And then there are these host of books that you've written. How do you balance your time with, depositions on one hand, and then taking care of the family, and of course, writing so many such, and also taking out time for social media to share the snippets that you do with us? How do you balance all of that? Are you an early riser, or how is your schedule like in a day?
Yeah, I suppose. I think with anything, at first it takes more time than it should, and eventually takes less time than it should. And so with posting on LinkedIn, when I first started about 4 years ago, posting daily, it was a task. I had to think through what I was going to write and how I was going to write it. And now it's very second nature, and I can basically do it within 20, 30 seconds. I can write a
Oh,
post. And so, as with anything, the more you do it, not only do you get better at it, you become much more efficient at it. With writing books, my first book took a very long time, and each successive book has taken less time to write. And it's become, it's taking less time to plan, to think out, and to actually commit to paper. Um, so whatever you want to do, understand that there's going to be some learning curve, and it may be frustrating at first, and it may seem like you're taking a lot longer than you should. But if you stick with it, eventually, not only will you get good at it, but you'll actually become very efficient at it and become second nature. Almost be like this muscle memory. Folks who run a marathon, when they start out,
right.
they run maybe a half mile, a mile, and before they know it, they're running a full marathon, and it's just a question of, well, maybe I can run it faster next time. And or people who work out and they start, doing some sort of exercise with a certain amount of weight, and before they realize they've doubled the amount of weight they can do without even realizing.
Correct.
So that's no different than what we do in our practice or in any of the pursuits we may have.
How much of an impact has the legal profession seen as far as COVID-19 is concerned in the US, especially on the legal profession?
Well, it's made us become much more technologically savvy.
Yeah.
Before COVID hit, there were a number of firms that were very advanced using technology, both in the firm and serving their clients. But there were a lot of firms that were kind of kicking and screaming and didn't want to do it. They really loved using paper. They didn't like the idea of doing or acting on a remote basis. The idea
Yeah.
of remote depositions and hearings was very foreign to most folks. And suddenly, around mid to late March, everything kind of shut down. At least it did in South Florida. And so we all had to learn this new reality very quickly. Our firm went remote in late March, and we
Mm.
returned to our office. You can see I'm in my office
Yeah,
again,
I can see
early
that.
June. Although now, I'm sure you guys are all following what's going on here. We're hitting about 10,000 cases a day again in Florida. But so we had to learn how to use Zoom like you're using it now, not only for our firm, but we had to use it for hearings and depositions, and I've done some mediations by Zoom.
Oh,
Uh,
wonderful.
we were having virtual meetings with
Mm.
organizations by Zoom. We have an organization I belong to. We're having our first virtual meeting in October, which will be like a 2-day meeting. It'll all be by Zoom.
Mm.
And what we learned is that we didn't really miss much of a step. There were a couple of weeks where we had to figure all this out technology-wise, but we were still serving our clients. We were able to do quality work, all within the confines of our home. And I think some of us got used to doing that. And when we had to return, that became kind of unusual because we had become accustomed to working from home. And so I suspect after all this is over, and hopefully it'll be over soon, a lot of firms will realize that they don't need as much real estate. They don't need to have
Right.
as large of a lease, because people can work from home. People don't need as big offices. We don't have to travel as much because we can take depositions effectively and handle hearings effectively via Zoom and other platforms. And Zoom isn't the only one. I think there's WebEx and
Mm.
GoToMeeting and some other platforms
Correct.
that are out there.
Yes.
But if there's been one change I think we've learned that technology is actually our friend, that can make things a lot easier, can reduce costs. And clients really appreciate that because they don't have to pay for our plane tickets or our mileage, and we can kind of contact and communicate with them more effectively. And I think also just the Zoom platform, I think before we were used to speaking with each other on the phone, and now we've become accustomed to actually seeing each other. And I
That's
think,
true.
things like FaceTime and Skype have become much more popular. So I think if anything, COVID-19, as deadly and terrible as it's been, has certainly kind of pushed the legal profession in the US into a more modern direction.
That's actually true for India as well. Most of our hearing, be it the Supreme Court down to the lower courts, all of our matters are now being e-filed, and all of them are getting heard through virtual conferences like this, video conferencing happening. But of course, I think there are certain limitations to it also, specifically if you're doing a cross. I think there we will see a little bit of a problem happening. As far as arbitration is concerned and the likes. However, what do you think about artificial intelligence, and do you see that has got a good role to play as far as legal profession is concerned? And if there is any specific AI related, products or that you may have been using, if you can
Yeah,
throw.
I think with AI, I think a lot of it has to do with data collection and interpretation.
Right.
Westlaw and other platforms are using AI to help attorneys figure out how judges may rule on a case, because we get to
Yeah.
see all their
Yeah.
rulings. We often see each other lawyers' profiles and see how we've done in various cases. Um, it's become very big when it comes to contracting, because you can look at contracts and provisions from a whole host of different contracts and making sure when you're doing your due diligence and you're revising contracts, you're not missing anything and that you're using the best language possible for your clients. I think a lot of insurance companies are using it to evaluate claims better because now they have that much more data, and they know how juries will make awards in our country, and what different claims have gone for, and different costs for experts. And so uh, uh, it, the data compilation has really given us a lot more information as opposed to just kind of guessing. In the past, clients would ask us, what do you think? And we'd kind of estimate or guesstimate what we think the outcome would be based on our own limited experience and our years of practice. And now we have a wealth of data and information analytics that help us make these decisions. And sometimes they don't even need our help because they have the information themselves, or there's these third parties that are compiling it for them and help them make decisions. I think so much of what we try to do is we're trying to make educated decisions. And the more data you have via AI or other resources, the more sound those decisions are.
So you see that AI has been helpful as far as understanding, the background of a judge is concerned in terms of which way he might rule, or what is it that you know kind of affects his decision making. That has been effective as far as the US is concerned. Do you
Yes,
think so?
here in Dade County, whether it's a male or female judge, we have access to all their prior decisions, and we can evaluate certain things. For example, we're on the defense side typically, and
Hmm.
often we'll move for summary judgment if
Right.
the facts and the law allow. And there's
Mm.
certain judges in our jurisdiction who rarely, if ever, grant summary judgment motions, and
Right.
that's
Right.
poured out by the data because we can see how many times people have filed motions for summary judgment and how often they've granted it. And I know there's a case, I won't mention the judge's name, but she, I think, only had granted maybe 3% of summary judgments. And we
Mm.
realized, well, I mean, if she only grants 3% of summary judgments, the odds of her granting ours is going to be pretty remote.
Right.
And then there was another judge that granted a much higher percentage, and we thought, well, in front of her, we'd have a much better chance. So having
Correct.
that information about a judge and how he or she was going to rule, whether it's on summary judgment or a motion to dismiss or motion to compel, or evidentiary hearings they may make at trial. That's all very helpful to sort of educate and instruct the client, saying, these are our chances of winning in front of this judge. We think we're going to, you think we're going to win on summary judgment. I agree on the law, we should,
Yeah.
but this judge probably is not going to grant it for whatever reason, because
Yeah. Yeah.
we're looking at her prior record and she just doesn't do it.
Mm.
And so having that information makes it much easier and
Correct.
allows you to provide much better data to your clients in terms of how to proceed.
That sounds really interesting. I think we might in India someday adopt some kind of a practice like that. So I'm not going to take too much of your time. I think I've already taken
No,
quite a bit.
no worries.
Um, uh, I think in parting, I would just want to for you to give us a message specifically to the law students here and young budding lawyers about how to one deal with COVID, because the class of 2020 is definitely getting into a very sad state, if we can say that. Specifically, I think economy wise, there are challenges which are going to be there, but if you can maybe give us some optimism to look forward to, that would be really nice.
I think with COVID, again, firms have realized that people don't need to be in the same office to work together.
Correct.
And
Mm,
once you make that leap, once you realize we don't have to be physically close to each other, and you realize, well, we don't even need to be in the same city, state, or country.
right.
And there are probably opportunities for gun lawyers around the world to
Mm,
work with American firms and European firms and Asian firms, whatever firm there may be out there, because now the borders matter a lot less. Now, obviously, a non American lawyer or a non-Florida lawyer can't practice law in Florida, but it doesn't
correct.
prohibit him or her from writing memos or writing motions, much like a non-lawyer legal professional would, like a paralegal or
Absolutely.
somebody else.
Yep. Yeah.
And so, and even though that might not be the ideal job and it may be a short-term solution, it does provide certain financial opportunities and certain legal opportunities to sort of go beyond the confines of your immediate city or region.
Absolutely.
And what won't surprise me, and it may already be happening, is that there are probably firms are realizing, we really need to go beyond just American law firms and American lawyers, because for a variety of reasons, we may be able to get talent from around the world because of their different experiences and backgrounds and whatever that may be. So if I was a law student and young lawyer working or living abroad, I would try to see what resources are out there and what companies are trying to do just that. What companies are trying to connect uh, law firms from one country to law students or lawyers in another. And I'm sure somebody's doing it, and maybe more than one person is doing it. And so, and if they're not, that's probably a great fertile ground for somebody to try to do it,
Correct. Yeah.
become that middleman or middlewoman to sort of facilitate that. So, so my recommendation is obviously network, get to know people on LinkedIn and other platforms, make those relationships that may lead to work where you're at, but also open your horizons and think of non-traditional avenues you can pursue and see if there are opportunities in law firms, even if it's like a law clerk position or a paralegal position. It may provide certain opportunities, and financially it may be more beneficial than what you may get paid where you're at now, because these firms may end up paying you more to do work that is not an attorney job, but maybe something this paralegal professional may actually be more financially conducive than what you may have nearby. So, uh, yes, it's a terrible situation we're all in, but it's created a new paradigm in terms of the practice, and attorneys who can take advantage of that will position themselves well in the future.
Thank you so much, Frank, for taking out time and being with us. Um, I mean, I think I have been a huge fan of your work for 2 years,
No,
and
thank you.
you've basically motivated me a lot of times when I'm not really feeling up to the mark, and your snippets really cheer me up every single day. But due to the time hour shift, it is basically in the evening that I get to see, which is when I need it the most.
Okay.
But thank you so much for watching this interview today, and I hope you will keep liking my video and share the same. Also, please do subscribe to my YouTube channel. And if you have any queries, you can always write to us or leave your comment in the comment box below.